to go. So I'm going to go around the horn here. So here we go. So first and up is the lovely Rachel Bailit. Rachel is an acting coach. She is fantastic. She and I have done several seminars together, and hopefully we'll get to do many more very soon in the COVID. And also we'll have to talk about maybe doing something online as well. So Rachel's here. So say hi to everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
You're all well and safe and staying creative. I've been on Zoom teaching every single day, and it's becoming the new norm. And I miss my buddy here, Dave, and all the seminars at the Guild and the fun we were having. And I'm glad that you're continuing here online with him. Yeah.
So we'll discuss, maybe we'll do something. We'll have to figure out what we can do with how to do something together. And it's lovely having you. So also we have Dave Schwartz with us. Dave is he is a returning contestant here on the on the show.
Because I just didn't tell enough lies the last time, so I had to come back.
Incriminate yourself. That's right. You didn't incriminate yourself nearly enough yet, Dave. So
when the cops don't bang on the door, you just you didn't tell them everything. Right?
Yep. So, but it's great having you here as always.
It's good to be here.
And Tim, are you here? Where's Tim? Tim is here. I just don't have him. I have him he's up. There we go. Wait a second. Where is Tim? There he is. Tim.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you, my friend. So
all right.
The lovely and talented Tim Eldred, who he has done many, many, many things, most notably recently Avengers Assemble and Spider-Man. So, and also he has a really great web. Is it a printed piece, Pitsberg? Is it printed as well, Tim?
No, it's an online webcomic, and it's designed only for the web, so it can never go to paper.
Gotcha. So, all right. So you have that as well. We are also joined by, let's see, these guys are popping up. So I invited a bunch of people this evening. So we have Brad Rader, if he can actually pop in here. I don't know.
Hey, that's not Brad Rader.
No, that's not Brad Rader. So we have the lovely Kimbrough. He's here. Kimbrough, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be
here. All right.
Kimbrough!
Hello.
Hey, how are you, kid? You look good.
So
good to see you, Kimbrough.
Yeah, you as well.
And we also have it's just a round table of like genius tonight. We also have the lovely and talented Chris Rutkowski here. Chris, can you say hi to everybody? You want to unmute yourself just for a second? Say hi, or you want to stay in the shadows? It's okay. So maybe when Chris
there he is. Hey,
where
Chris.
is he?
He's right next to Brad here.
Ah, there we go.
But he's got to unmute himself.
You got to unmute your. I'll unmute you. All right. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Dave.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I haven't seen you in a while. You doing well?
I'm doing well. What about
yourself? Awesome. Chris, I'm going to introduce you to everybody too. Chris is a fantastic storyboard guy, director, working at stuff at Marvel and all over that. So what else? So what are you up to these days? You just finished up on Big Mouth. I know you were over there.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting at home doing nothing. Great.
Just kind of waiting around. That's okay. That's good too. That's never a bad thing. So. Yeah. And you're COVID free. I can see you're COVID free. So that's
so far so good.
So far so good. So it's good seeing you. All right, and then then our final contestant here tonight is Brad Rader. Brad, say hi to everybody. Bradley.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, Brad.
So Brad is a fantastic storyboard artist as well. All of these people are extremely talented, and I am in awe of their presence and so I'm glad that everybody's here. So now it's going to be an interesting discussion because usually these are just pretty free flowing kind of things. Like it's just kind of let's talk about stuff. So Rachel, you're kind of the wild card in this mix because everybody here is a storyboard artist. But wow. I think it's interesting to have you here, and we'll talk a little bit about acting and how, some of the things that because I think, Dave was telling me before you joined us, like Dave Schwartz was saying that he was just going over student films today. He teaches at the Cleveland Institute for Art in Cleveland. He's an instructor there, and their senior graduation is a theme, is a film and an animated short and a thesis and everything. But, you know, we were talking a little bit of just getting into like acting a little bit and talking a little bit about, you know, just different kinds of things. So, you know, I always love hearing your perspective, Rachel, on this stuff as we, you know, a little bit. So so we'll get a little started. And if you have thoughts, feel free to jump in. Okay. That goes for everybody. Like, you know, hopefully we're not all talking over each other, but, you know, if you have thoughts or whatever, feel free to interject. Okay. Don't don't be shy. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. How do we start this thing going? I think everybody should what we can do is we had an introduction, but maybe we can get a little bit more in depth with this stuff, a little bit with the, so Tim, you know, I wanted to start with you a little bit. So tell us a little bit, because Spider-Man's just the third season now is just dropping on it. And you were it's on Disney. It's not on Disney Plus, right? It's on Disney.
Disney XD.
Yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? Let's get it going with that. Plug your work. Plug your stuff.
Okay. Well, before TV cartoons, I was in the comic book world, and I made the transition pretty smoothly back in 1996. And from then on, I tended to get involved with action-adventure shows, which I really liked. That seemed to be my bread and butter. And that ultimately led to a very long run at Marvel Animation Studio, where I still work now. And over the course of the 20 plus years that I worked as either a storyboard artist or a director, I got to work on 5 different incarnations of Spider-Man.
Wow.
The current one is my 5th, and it's just getting started, and eventually it's going to be on, I think, Disney Junior. But in the meantime, I worked on a lot of other shows like the Avengers, all 5 seasons of that. The previous version, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, a couple of different Batman shows, various things for Warner. So I've been around the horn quite a bit.
Yep.
And I've drawn more Spider-Man than Steve Ditko at this point, I think.
So, yeah, I mean, you know, it's so weird how, I mean, you've worked like, you know, all over the place as well. Like you were on Brave and the Bold. You did work on Brave and the Bold for Batman. Were you the showrunner on Dragon Tales at Sony?
So talking to me?
Yeah, you were the showrunner, weren't you, on Dragon Tales?
I was the series director for season 1.
I never know how to describe that title, because it's like, I don't know. I never know what the real difference is between that. It's like but you were the guy in charge, like of that as well. So it wasn't, you haven't just worked in action. I mean, but primarily, I guess it's true. It's like you've had a career kind of like myself. Like you dabble in comedy stuff, but you're mostly get pulled into doing action work and doing.
That's correct. And the term that you're looking for is supervising director.
Supervising director.
Yeah,
Yes.
which is the guy in charge of all the art, essentially.
Yeah.
The showrunner is a step up from that, and he's basically in charge of the show itself, from the writing stage through design and through post.
Very cool. And so in talking a little bit about some of the stuff that you've done with your career, what do you have a favorite? Is there one that you really liked one over the other with all the iterations of Spider-Man that you worked on? Was there one that you liked more?
Well, I think my favorite project has to be Avengers Assemble, simply because it ran for such a long time and went through so many different levels, and it was simultaneously the hardest and most satisfying series I've ever worked on, because it topped absolutely everything that came before it, just in the magnitude of what we had to do in such a short time. And it was hell on earth to get done, but I felt like I was using every part of my brain to get that show made.
Well, you also had a Canadian crew too, right? You had mostly the guys that you had
for
were
a while,
Canada, right?
for the first 3 to 4 seasons, I had a Canadian team, which brought a whole extra set of challenges, because when you work remotely, kind of like we're all doing now, you don't get much face-to-face contacts, and your communication is kind of crunched down into this tiny little wire. And you've got to make sure that everything that goes through that wire speaks for you when you can't speak for yourself. Yeah. So I would end up writing probably a textbook worth of notes for every single episode that they boarded for me, which again was a pain in the ass, but it was really educational, because I had to synthesize my thought process and my creative process in a way that I never had done before, and in a way that you wouldn't have to without that kind of a challenge.
Let me ask, say that, what kind of, when you were writing these notes, were they more story notes? Were they notes about animation, for the board artist? Like what, was it a combination of all of that stuff? Like what was your, like, just give it like a small example of what you mean by that, because that's an interesting point.
Well, I was dealing with a Canadian team, which meant that most of the shows they had worked on up there in Vancouver were kids shows, for like 5 and under.
Yeah.
And suddenly they were being tasked with working on something that was imitating some of the most sophisticated filmmaking anyone had ever done. And we had multiple levels of live action fight choreography to work out. So everybody needed a crash course in that. A few people picked it up quickly, but most of them struggled through entire seasons to get it right.
Yeah.
And they needed a lot of coaching. And so I had to go all the way down to like the wooden beams that hold the house together, in terms of explaining how these things work and how one thing builds on another and then builds on another and builds on another. And it was like going through school again as a student and a teacher at the same time.
It's funny because teaching for me, it reinforces a lot of the things, you and you learn, like the cliche is true. I think you learn as much from the students as you do as the teacher. It's like it's there's so much that I gain from doing that. And you're right, like there is a sophistication of storytelling when you're talking preschool to a show that's meant for a little older audience. And the sensibilities, it's funny how they change, because when I left Marvel to go to work on a preschool show, and the sensibilities it's a mindset, like you have to really shift your gears, because you can't do these big adventurous kind of shots, because the audience that you're doing it for isn't sophisticated enough to really, it might scare them, or it might be too much, that they really won't comprehend the cinema, the language of cinema with that. So I find that to be a very interesting kind of a process.
Well, I think it's a very healthy exercise for all of us to go back to basics from time to time. Because if you work too long for one particular age group, you get so inured to what they are accustomed to seeing and the kind of visual language that they can process. You forget that there's an audience, younger than that, and probably another one younger than that, that doesn't know any of this stuff. And they need to know filmmaking, or you need to show them filmmaking 101 in order to help them grow into the audience that you're eventually going to be able to tell the more sophisticated stories.
Well, you sit there when you're doing preschool, and you'll say to yourself, you want to do that. You'll see something like, oh, I could do this elaborate, I could do this pan, or I could do this. And you have to say, no, I can't do that, because that's too complex for a little one to really, you have to keep going back to the basics. You have to really go back to
actually, I have the same problem on the adult primetime shows.
Do you, Brad?
Like King of the Hill, Bob's Burgers. Bob's Burgers was incredibly simple and constrained filmically.
They definitely want
in a certain
everything
kind of way.
to
It was
stay.
very much like working on preschool.
Well, it is. They don't want camera moves. They want the jokes to play. They want the writing to read. So they don't want the visuals to clutter the dialogue. That's usually how they feel with that stuff. You know, it's how they are with that.
Well, there's
Dialogue
nothing
is
funny
sacred.
about a dynamic camera angle. Flat camera angle, a static thing will let the comedy play. I think that's why they default to that most of the time.
I know that eye line is very important with that's a big thing in comedy. That they really are focused.
Getting the pupils just right.
I was talking to I did a seminar literally right before we kind of shut things down at the Guild and on comedy, and Ashley Long, who was the supervising director on Paradise PD, and Brian Manolfi, who's one of her directors, came to speak, and that was one of the things that they really talked about. Like Ashley was like, people don't realize how important that is. Like the eye line, that what you're looking at is so important because it motivates jokes and it motivates all of that. But you're right, Brad. Like there is no doubt, and Chris, you're right too. Like it's you have that staticky shot because you want the comedy to read. You want if it's too complex, I think people they're afraid that the joke gets lost. And and it depends. Sometimes I think it does. Like sometimes I think if you're too clever, the shot might be cool, but the joke doesn't play as well as just keeping things.
Comedy is played in wide shots because the entire body is the vessel for the communication.
Yeah.
You have to see body language, reaction, that type of thing. There's a body language vocabulary that carries that information along. But the thing is that you also can't underestimate even a young audience, because they're exposed to so much more, because there's so much more to see. They go to see action adventure movies because mom and dad are too lazy to hire a babysitter, so they grab up the kids and they take them to go see Jurassic Park when they're 2 years old, and don't think that the kids are going to flip out when they see that kind of obnoxious stuff. But they or video games, so they're also kind of exposed to it. So I think it all depends on the story that you're trying to tell. And if you do something sophisticated, just making sure that it serves the story and the action is clear, and you can do some of that stuff.
I definitely, you're preaching to the choir for me. That's the argument I make most of the time with that. You're bringing up the acting. Rach, you have any?
Yeah. Well, I'm listening and I'm thinking of all the seminars we've given together and how I teach at the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute. So I created something called method boarding, which is based on the technique I teach. So it's all inside out. So we've been able to, I've created a whole curriculum on exercises that get animators to come from the inside, what motivates the movement. And then, it's a matter of stretching from there, but to start with the kernel of truth and motivation. And so all standard acting technique is included. The difference with the Strasberg work is that I include the sensory in it as well. So the sense memory exercises, all that is so perfect, because when you're doing boards, people are responding to things that aren't there, and that really seems to flesh out the scene. And I'm listening to a lot of things you said, and Tim was talking about building one thing on another. Dave and I have done some great exercises where we've really taken animation scripts and we've been able to let the animators get in there and act themselves and experience what it's like to be in their characters' bodies and to understand what that feels like, and then to create from that true experience and put their own experiences into the characters.
I had a class last night. I've been doing the online stuff right now as everybody. And I got into empathy. Like one of the students pitched a board, and it was well executed. It was well drawn, but there was no emotion to it. There was no, and one of the things that I thought she was lacking tremendously was empathy. Like she just got the A to B to C, but there was no real anything there that you were one of the things that I'm doing in my classes now, Rachel, is I'm talking about great character introduction, because I really believe that especially in storyboards, usually we're always given opportunities to introduce characters. Even if you've seen a character a million times, there's always ways to say, how can you define Iron Man better? How can you do something so the audience relates to that character better? And to me, it's empathy, and it's really finding those human kind of moments.
Definitely, and getting super specific on what those are,
right,
is so important. But it's true. I mean, it's true with actors. I mean, it's true with artists. Like, it begins with you. How can you understand empathy if you don't as a human being? And so, so much of what I do is to open up people to their feelings, because they've been conditioned to close off. And I find it amazing that animators are put in such an important role of creating this work, and expect, under these high stress environments, and are creating work about feelings, right? That's what acting is. We're in the feeling business. And I'm amazed at how you all operate under such stress and are able to pull this stuff out, this feeling out without the actor training is stunning to me. Yeah.
I was going to say, Rachel, that what I find in a lot of the students is that what they watch and what they react to, because of technology, where they're so used to not communicating and emoting and feeling confident in expressing themselves, that they look towards anything that they can watch, they relate to, where the characters are. It's radio with pictures. Because they just don't want to. They're afraid that it goes too far. It exposes the character. It's because that's how they feel, and it's really difficult to get them to understand in storyboarding that you have to exaggerate. You have to push and really dig in, and like you say, you have to really go from the inside out. Because
otherwise we don't feel.
It has to come from truth and a core, and I always tell the kids that, okay, well, what you're showing me is stuff. You're showing me a lot of stuff, but you gotta bake a yellow cake before you start icing it and putting the jimmies on it, So and they're so interested in the icing, because that's what they're looking at. That's what they're seeing. That's what's ringing their bell, or they look at a simple style and go, oh, well, I'll do that. And because look at, they don't draw correct anatomy, so I can get by drawing wacky anatomy. And you go, well, no, that's just the style of the show. But if you have these guys do something else, they can draw like Disney, or they can do those kind of things. So it's all perception, and it's really difficult to get them to go beyond that and feel comfortable doing it.
Right. And I think there needs to be a nourishing environment. That's why I think acting for animators should be at every single school.
Absolutely.
It's just like one of our famous alumni is Al Pacino. Everyone wants to come in and be Pacino, but little do they know that, Pacino started in theater, and he played those sensitive roles and characters. Sure. And of course, he built his way to Scarface,
Yeah. It's the same thing. I mean, it's the same thing as, like I said, empathy is such a huge, one of the reasons why I started this stuff with Rachel for these seminars that we've done is because I feel like there's a real lack of that. I feel that storyboard artists in particular, and I'm sure everybody here will agree with me when I say this, what separates, in my opinion, a really great storyboard artist from someone who's mediocre is their acting ability, and how they're able to convey acting in the storyboards that they do. And I think that it's such a vital place, such a vital part. And yet somehow people just assume that you're going to be able to instantly, like you said, Rachel, like under all this stress and duress, pull these acting performances out in your work as an artist. And if you don't really know how to get there, that's a very difficult process. That becomes a very difficult thing to achieve. And that's one of the reasons why I like doing those seminars with you, because you really are good at like teaching people how to kind of get to that point. It's
Thank
it's a
you.
very
I mean,
thing.
I do feel like life experience also, when you get a lot of young, I just recently taught a class at DreamWorks with so many young animators, you know, that also life experience plays a key into how you understand and how you develop empathy. And they were very honest with me and brought me, you know, their problems, their challenges. And you know, a lot of people who go into animation are also very shy. It seems to be. I don't know why they've maybe grown up creating their art in a very personal, private way, and then all of a sudden you're expected to reveal that in a larger way. And how do you deal with that?
Most artists are introverts, I think, by nature, and actors are probably more extroverted, I would think, you know. And I think that that's the chasm between, you know, and that's really, how do you bridge that gap to teach a storyboard artist who's an introvert to be a little more extroverted. Like Dave was telling me before we started, that, you know, part of the thing was pitching. Kimbrough, this goes right into what Dave was saying. Oh, we should do, you know, something talking about pitching. I'm like, hey. So,
you know, I just did a workshop for women in television and film of New England, and we had people from all over the country. And they asked me to do one on public speaking.
Oh, that's great.
I send you the link to that, and a lot of them were filmmakers and producers, and so I covered pitching. Actually,
that's, you know, it's such a big thing. Like Dave was saying, well, Dave, you can tell everybody what you were telling me, you know, that the pitch was kind of when they were pitching, they were very, you know, not great with the stuff that they were, you know,
Well, you know, you've pitched, we've all pitched here. So, you know, that you really have to, especially when you're pitching a storyboard, you have to bring your audience into that world. And you have to get them to see what you see, because they're just looking at pictures. They're not looking at motion. So in your performance, in your energy, in your volume, the way you talk, it all plays into drawing them in. Because what I tell my students is, you know, your job is to make me want to take my checkbook out and write you a big fat check. To do your project. Yeah. So the only way that's going to happen, because, you know, as I tell my students, and you know that you know, executives are idiots, and they get paid a good salary to say no, and so you have to catch them, and you have to draw them in, and they don't know how to read storyboards, so you have to act it out for them, and they have to really feel it, and the best people that are going to pitch are ones that can really engage their audience. The best pitch I ever saw was, you know, you guys all know Jeff DeGrandis, don't you? Yeah. So when we were at Disney, it was the pitch for was a Pith Possum, and what was the other cartoon that was in there? Anybody remember? It was Schnookums and Me. It was Schnookums and Me with Pith Possum. And so Bill Kopp got up and he said a few words, and then Jeff went into the pitch. Okay, he had about 10 pitch cards, and he just blew the room away with those 10 pitch cards. It took all of about 5 minutes, but he was so engaging that by the time it was over, the guy said, "Okay, let's do it."
Yeah, that's great.
You know. Because usually it's you know, you have to, you know, do brain surgery and take hostages and everything else, you know, and then to get them to at least give you a yellow light, you know.
Yeah.
And Jeff just got in there and says, well, then we do this, and that goes, and it comes in there, and that's really funny. And, you know, he's using the squeaky voices and everything, and, you know, 5 minutes later, the executive's going, okay, let's do it. Yeah. That was it. The end. So, you know, it's an
important thing. Tim, let me ask you, how important is pitching to you whenever somebody's like presenting their boards? Because I know it's a much different process, but I'll let you, you know, give your thoughts about that.
Well, out of necessity, I have come to prefer the non-pitch pitch, where the work just speaks for itself.
Yeah.
But I'm a whole different audience, you know.
Well, Marvel. I mean, action stuff. A lot of times, boards. The art of pitching is kind of gone with this. With Toon Boom, you put in the audio track with the right, and then it's like, okay, let's see what you did.
Yeah. I've never really been in a position where someone had to pitch a board to me in the way that's been described, where you've got somebody standing up and making a presentation with voice and body motion, and trying to embody what's on the paper for whoever's sitting in front of you. I've just never been in that seat, and I've also never been in the other seat where I have to do the presentation. So I consider myself pretty lucky, because I'm not an actor. I have no desire to be one.
Come on.
Those
Everyone
are skills
wants
that
to
I
be
just
an
have not
actor.
needed to develop.
Yeah.
And so just because of the job that I have, the work has always had to speak for itself, but I think there's some value in that. And also as a time-saving factor.
Yeah, I think that, it's a much different beast working, I know that firsthand, working at Marvel as well, that, and Warner's is the same way. I mean, any action show, you're very rarely going in and pitching the work that's there. And Dave, that too from Scooby Doo and everything as well. Like, you just don't do it. And I think it's a shame in a way.
I think comedy shows do more of that.
Yeah.
Because that's how we did Johnny Bravo. At the end of 4 weeks or so, we'd pin up the boards.
Yeah.
And the board guy would act out, and we had to do all the voices too. So everybody had their version of Johnny, and everybody and all the other characters. And it gave the writers a chance to kind of hear the dialogue, because on those kind of shows, you didn't record the voices until the board was locked. So that what the voice talent recorded was exactly what the cartoon needed, rather than the other way around, which is always difficult, because then you're stuck.
Well, you're making choices that you wouldn't make. You fight your own nature with a choice that is better, and there's nothing worse than that. But the acting performance just doesn't support the what the scene needs a lot. Sometimes I find that to be the most frustrating part of having the voice track first. And I always thought it was putting the cart before the horse. Like, I don't understand. Like, I understand that, maybe Rachel, you can speak to this. Actors, we're always told that, all the actors don't want to see anything to affect their performance. Like, when you're reading the script. So even if you're looking at the board, if you think there's a better way of, maybe it actually makes you make a better choice because of that, as opposed to just going in blind beforehand. Like Cartoon Network.
I would want to see it. I would want to see it beforehand. Absolutely. I would want to be informed with everything I could be informed of.
It makes sense to me too.
Yeah.
I would think the same thing. Yeah.
Well, you're missing some dramatic opportunity if an actor gives you a read, but you can't do the bigger moment that it needs, because it's not gonna, the voice and the art is not going to match up. So you have to pull it back, and you just kind of, it's always frustrating, because you go, another missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
A great moment.
And didn't the director know that, though? Hasn't the director seen the art?
Well, in some instances, the director being in the recording studio, sometimes it's just more of a courtesy than anything. Usually, sometimes the writers are the ones that are in control of the production, and so they're directing the voice director to record the session the way the writer's hearing it in their heads. And if they're thinking in terms of radio dialogue, like a sitcom where it's all joke, and there's no acting, no character, then that's what you wind up with.
But they're not seeing the overall picture, because they're concentrated on their lines.
So more than likely, when your show is being recorded, it's show number 4 where you have a recording session every day that week.
Yeah.
So you're just, you're hitting the highlights, you're just banging them out, you're getting them done. The actors want to come in and get out.
Well,
Yeah, I
when I was
Sorry.
working on Bob's Burgers, my cubicle was right outside of the voice recording office, or no, the animatic construction office, and I would listen to the editor play take after take after take of a certain line, inflected in every different way you can think of. I mean, they were basically constructing the performance.
Mm-hmm.
Little pieces.
Well, I worked with Andrea Romano, and I think Andrea was the best. Was fantastic. With the, as far as voice direction, one of the things that was interesting though was, she would, if the actor was doing something, you'd be like, no, that needs to be like this, and you'd say like how you want the line to be read, but she would never tell the actor that. She would guide them to that line, and sometimes it was maddening because it was like, why don't you just tell them what the line is? And they're like, no, we can't do it that way.
I imagine you're dealing with big celebrities who do these parts.
Some of them, like Mark Hamill, and some of these people. But you know what? I don't think those guys really would have cared. Like, they didn't strike me as that kind of an actor where they would be upset by that. Matter of fact, in some ways, I think he probably would have preferred it at times to be like, here's.
Yeah, actors love to be directed. I mean, they love to have adjustments, and it's part of the creative process.
Yeah, so I never understood.
When I was,
with the exception of Buddy Hackett.
Well, did you ever see?
Wait a second. Chris has to. What do you mean? Why Buddy Hackett was difficult?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say.
All right,
he just did not like to be directed.
Well, there you go.
I idolized that guy from my childhood, and seeing him in voice record, it was like, wow, man.
How many of us have heard?
He was doing Shakespeare.
How many of us have heard the CD of Stars at Their Worst?
I have never heard that.
And the Buddy Hackett one should have been on there.
There is a great the audio of a recording session with Orson Welles, but the best is our pal. The best is Bill Shatner. At the absolute tippy top of the list, hands down. Best guy, going round and round with the voice director over how do you say the word? Well, I say sabotage. No, it's sabotage. No, but it's sabotage. And they go back and forth with that.
I got some Bill Shatner stories, but we'll have to save those for
I have a private
conversation.
I have a good one too, but
yeah. So
when I was working for the American Comedy Network, they would have us come in, and we got to not only write the comedy donuts for the DJs, but we got to pick the voices that we want to do for them as well, because we would wrap our mind around the situation of the comedy, and then we would kind of create our own characters to match the situation. And so we got a chance to have a lot of freedom with not only what we wrote, but actually how we could perform it into the donut. And that was a real.
Oops.
It was
a real what?
You froze, Kimbrough. You froze.
It was a real cliffhanger, is what it was.
No.
Hey, Kimbrough,
that's all I got.
The American Comedy Network, are you talking about the one in Bridgeport, Connecticut?
Yeah.
Do you know Bob Pondillo?
That was a long time ago. I don't think I got a chance to meet Bob. I worked with some other guys.
I worked for them before you got there, because when they were just in their infancy. Yep, I designed their logo.
Oh, cool! It's a cool logo.
Yeah, and I used to write and do some voice work. Bob was a DJ here in Cleveland who I knew, and then he was in Connecticut doing the American Comedy Network.
Wow, small world. That was a lot of fun working there, man. I had a blast.
Yeah, it was back. It was fun. It was a good time.
We'll have to do one of these, just talking about bad voice acting performance, situations.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I'm sure everybody has some good ones. So,
yep.
So Tim, I want to ask you: are there any when you're dealing with the process, are you dealing with the actors as well? I don't know how Marvel does that. Are the directors allowed to go into the voice records?
No, there's a very thick wall between the art side and the acting side.
Okay.
And it's been that way at most studios. I've found that there's very little contact between storyboarding and acting. Sometimes an episode director can go in just to be a fly on the wall. Sometimes a supervising director can go in, but their ability to influence the process is limited. And I find that though that can be frustrating, there is some value to it because that wall goes the other way too. And the last thing you want is several levels of non-artists trying to be artists and trying to make movies when they don't have the expertise. And so I think there's value in everybody having their own camp and just a small little keyhole that you can look through to monitor the other camp without influencing it, without having the authority, I should say, to influence. So it takes some getting used to.
Well, I mean, I think too, we never had many alts to work from at Marvel. It was always what you got was what you got, and that was kind of.
They did have quite a good stable of actors on the Avengers show, quite experienced and a good voice director too. Makes a huge difference. And I can contrast that with something that happened on the very first Spider-Man show I did, which was back in 2002. It followed the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie. And the network that ran the series was MTV. And so they thought a good gimmick would be to bring in some music stars as voice actors. And these were people with a lot of experience on the music side of things, but almost none with acting into a microphone.
What could go wrong, Tim?
The results were very, very mixed. Sometimes they were amazing. Like Rob Zombie played a very, very good Kurt Connors. But this is a guy with some acting chops,
Yeah.
On the other hand, there was a character who was voiced by a singer named Eve, who I haven't heard from in many, many years. I don't even know who she was back then. But her performance was so, I will just say, unskilled that the series director had to literally edit together syllables of words to get a convincing performance.
Wow.
And so all of those lines had to be Frankenstein together in the ninth hour. Of course, all the hard work has to get done in the ninth hour.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to a combination of skills that are all working together.
Yep. There's no doubt. It's a different process at studios. Some studios are very good about having directors in with the actors. Some, like you said, Tim, like there's a merit to that, because if they stay out of your way doing the art side of things, that's kind of what you do want, and so you do want that not to have that interference. And Marvel is very good at that. They're very good at the art side. I know I never felt like we were being infringed on with from any side of things. They let us be who we were, and for the most part, I think that it's why it goes so well, because it's it's fairly seamless that way.
And there's that old show business joke about, I do this now, but I really want to direct. And in most cases, you don't want them to direct.
Yeah, and I think everybody wants to be the director, right? I mean, that is kind of the thing, until they actually have to direct and then take responsibility, and then it's like, I'm not the director. I don't know. That's your choice. So, yeah, I always say every storyboard artist should get a chance to be a director, and I don't mean that as like every storyboard artist is amazing and it's like, really the reason why is because once you've directed, you understand the value of meeting deadlines and the value of your work, have clarity in your work, and all the things that people talk about, and until you direct, you don't really get that opportunity.
Well, I think in an ideal world, we'd all do everyone else's job for at least a little while for exactly that reason.
Get some empathy, huh, Brad? Yeah, to get some.
Well, or just, actually do animation. Like, oh my God, this is hard. Who knew?
It's very hard. it's, yep.
Well, I think a storyboard artist does it. They just naturally do that because sometimes you have to design a character because the character designer doesn't have time to do it right then and there, and they'll
the backgrounds.
Or you'll design a background and they'll just take it off the board. Yeah.
Always the
so it does give you a certain amount of empathy for what.
There's like almost little distinction between storyboarding and animating now.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right.
That was a bad example. Never mind that one. Something else, like I don't know.
Never mind.
Like
just cut that out of the show.
PA,
yeah, we'll edit that out, Brett.
I mean,
it's okay.
Let's have like empathy for PAs.
I'll edit that out later.
Well,
that's really, truthfully, those are poor people that you do need empathy for half the time. Those people get shit on quite a bit.
I did all those jobs when I came to town. I worked in casting. I worked as a PA. I repped directors at this commercial production company. I was on every end of it, while I was acting. It was so helpful.
Yeah, it gives you such insight. Actually, there's a guy, his name's JJ Conway, and JJ can't make it tonight, but JJ's the director on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Great guy. And he's spoken at several of these things. He's so gracious. But he started out being he was a PA, and he said that was like really for him, that was a huge learning thing. And a lot of the people that I know, especially the younger artists, a lot of them did start out in production, and they have a lot more empathy and knowledge of the process. And they find it to be a very, very beneficial thing for them as board artists to kind of understand that, or as directors, you understand it from the ground up, and you know from the very working at your way at the bottom how important just different things are, and importance of just certain things. And I think when people come in as board artists, and haven't maybe done that, they don't understand that sometimes, that there's that's not a fun job by any stretch of the imagination. So,
well, then you become a cleanup and revision artist for Brad Rader.
yeah.
Oh, well, that's true.
That's the best job in town.
Well, that's what I heard. That's what I've heard. I heard that's I gotta say, thank God I worked with Brad. And Dave, if I didn't start my career in animation working with you guys, I don't know where I would have.
Well, I remember, Dave, when you were doing a board for me that I was like storyboard supervising, I was changing it too much of it. And you said, why can't you just leave it as it is if it works? And I said, I can't. I have to change it.
I was just a young ingenue back then,
well,
and I didn't know any difference.
Well, it's like I wonder about that. I wonder, like, am I being too picky?
That is a pitfall of being a board guy, is that how you see the scene happening and how somebody else interprets it. And you really have to teach yourself to accept and look at it from the board artist's point of view. And if it is working, every once in a while it doesn't work, or you had something else in mind. I know that I always found, rather than making the revision artist crazy, Brad, I would just go ahead and change it myself, Yeah. But the thing is that, especially since it was my first job, it was part of the learning process. So it was of value to kind of be put through the ringer. I was just thinking, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was just thinking when I saw that you were going to be here tonight, and I was thinking back of like the early days at Deke, and just thinking about how overwhelmed I was by you.
Wow.
Because first of all, you're taller than me, so already that's imposing, and you were so focused and so opinionated. I mean, you've mellowed a lot now, Brad. But back then, Brad, you know, he and I butted heads a lot of times. I mean, it was all in good fun, and it was all for the better. But you know, Brad was the Mac Daddy of the Alf crew.
Yeah,
and
but
I
always
thought
had
that was Kevin.
intensity level like so high about what you're doing. I mean, it's something I've always admired about you.
I was going to say, I agree with Chris with that. Like, I admire, you know, there's a passion in the work that Brad has. And I think I'm a believer in kind of what Dave said about, as a director, if you see something, sometimes it may not be exactly what you would have done, but you also have to see it as, does it work? Yeah, it works. Sometimes I think the idea is, you know, and if it's better than what you would have come up with, even all the better than what you would have envisioned. And I think that, you know, but I do think there's something to be said about, you know, being passionate about something. And especially when you're working with younger board artists, if you're and this is the thing that I thought Brad did very well. You never made a change of something without saying, look, here's, you know, I did this for this reason. It was like, wow, that's a great reason. There's a great reason to do that. And it was always coming from an informed kind of an opinion. It wasn't just like, you know, I don't like the shot. It was, I don't like the shot because, and here's why. And to me, that was invaluable because you learn from that. You know, that was a learning experience where you sit there and go, okay, I had never considered that before. I'd never considered that, getting that emotion across. You know, Brad, you were one of the first people who really talked to me about like film noir and about using shadow and, you know, the Catwoman, you know, the what's the film noir, Brad? The
Cat People.
The Cat People. Thank you.
Oh, right, yeah.
And, you know, and the use of shadow, and it was such a simple thing, and it was like, wow, like I never thought about. And actually, last night there was a girl who did a horror pitch. She did a pitch, and that was one of the things I told her. I said, you really should look at some, you know, Val Lewton or somebody who you know, I think I said Catwoman to her, but I said it's, you know, the use of shadow, because they had no budget. They didn't have any money for anything. So they had to use like shadows on the wall to convey something, but it was creepy as hell. And the emotion you got, you probably couldn't have gotten a better emotion than if you would than using that visual for that. And those are the things that like I find invaluable with the right teachers. If you're with the right people, there's a lot, you know, I find this to be the case today. And maybe you'll disagree with me. I find that a lot of students are more caught up in the flash of things. Brilliant, really good illustrators, really good animators too. Really, really nice posing, but I don't think they're good storytellers as much. I think there's a lost art that's happening now, where people are missing storytelling and those kinds of moments.
When I was like having this conversation at a party with a director, and I was talking about like storyboard tests, and I was saying, you want to see if somebody can really draw and tell a story, make them stage a dinner table sequence like King of the Hill where everybody's sitting around that table, and make them stage a sequence there with somebody standing, somebody sitting, somebody walking into the room.
Yeah,
everybody has to inhabit the same space.
Well, the very first assignment I give in my class is literally it's a 20 panel maximum of a couple eating dinner and the waiter interrupts their dinner. And it's like whatever scenario they have with that. But I purposely give them something that's quiet, that's, you know, it's, and you'd be amazed at how like in the 3 years that I've been giving this assignment, there's some similarities, but very few. Like it's all so diverse in how people tackle people sitting down and having dinner, you know, and what they're doing. And it's a fascinating exercise to me because it's not like some big, you know, action-y thing. I don't want, you know, it's usually, you know, they're pretty good about like the staging and the situation and you know, I think that there's merit to that. I think that, you know, how do you stage a quiet scene? and how do you get emotion from that scene, and how do you build emotion, how do you build suspense, how do you build it, how do you construct that and make it interesting to people? So I think that's absolutely true.
I can offer another example of that too from the comic book world, which I heard through the grapevine about the editor on the Spider-Man comics at Marvel. Mm-hmm. He says that everybody shows him images of Spider-Man swinging through New York, but the artists who really capture his attention are the ones who draw Peter Parker sitting around in his apartment, his apartment, and still make it interesting.
Yeah,
because you've got to be able to do both.
Right. I mean, you can do tons of pinups. You can do a ton of pinup shots, and for a comic book. But really, the truth is how well do you stage the quiet scenes? Those again, that separates the really great artists to me from people who are just like all flash. There were tons of guys who, you'd look at their stuff and you're like, holy crap, like they rendered the crap out of this, or they did, these pin-up-y shots that look so cool. But the guys that I've always liked are like come from the Will Eisner school, the Lee Weeks school of illustration, where you look at these quiet scenes, but they're beautifully illustrated and they're so interesting to look at. And I think that the same holds true, Tim, of doing, stuff in animation as well. You're going to have quiet scenes in a show. How do the board artists pull those off? And do they make them engaging? Do they make them, are they visually appealing to look at? Or do they just over the head shot, over the shoulder, one shot, because there's an art form to that too, I think, as to how you compose your master shots and how you build into those and where you go and build around that stuff. And do you make it interesting and engaging, or do you make it kind of just by, rote? And
that's where the empathy comes in again.
Yes.
Where you put yourself in the viewer's seat and think about what they would like to see.
Yes.
And what's going to pull them along, what's going to motivate them to continue watching whatever you're showing them.
Yeah.
Everything has a temperature. And a lot of times when I feel under pressure, I won't go through this process, but it's really handy when you're going through the script on the second read to think about the scene in terms of temperature. Like if it's just two characters talking and they're getting along well, the temperature is 1. And if they're in a full-on fight, then the temperature is 10. And then you've got your Dutch angle and stuff like that. And you don't want to wear the audience out.
No.
You don't want to have a 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. I always think about it like playing the piano. You wouldn't go bong, 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 bong. You have to play all the notes.
Yeah, I agree. I think
I can't tell you how often I use analogies like that, including my class I just got out of, in terms of the variety of choices you can make in a performance. On that note, it's 11 p.m. on the East Coast here.
All right, Rach.
I've been teaching
Thank you.
all day, and I
just had a question for you too. Oh, well, next time.
What is it? I'll take it.
Oh, so when you're preparing for a role, do you do all that back story? Do you fill in the blanks? Like, like where's the character from? My mom and father relationship, etc.
I do 100%. I mean, if there's a script that gives me information, I obviously go to that first, but I definitely fill all that in. And then with the style of acting I do, then I personalize so I can understand it and make choices that help me to understand experiences I haven't had. And then, of course, we have all that prepared and then drop it all to be in the moment. So
it's really cool.
It's a combination of all that, but it's like 90% preparation, and it's so important. And what I realized in teaching actors, including my class that just finished, is that, people don't know how to read into a script, and to develop that sensitivity and to read and really understand those words are really important, and to fill them up so nothing's empty or general, but everything is filled up and specific specific and you know how you feel about everything. You have a point of view. And so that's what I hopefully am teaching my actors.
Well, Rachel, let me ask you before you leave, is there any,
Yeah.
this is going to go out onto the worldwide webosphere. Is there anything that you would like to say to, anything like sign up to do anything? You have anything?
Well, I mean, I'm going to continue to teach in animation. I teach in the studios as well as with you at the Guild. And I do have animators that come to me. I have done private classes and coaching. I teach all over. I teach East Coast, West Coast. I have a home. I have an apartment in LA. I guess is my home. And I am also here on the East Coast teaching. And I believe that what I teach is applicable to a lot of things. I teach at the Getty. I teach public speakers, politicians. And mainly it's the process of being authentic and learning, understanding through your own individual experience and being comfortable being authentic and being you and putting that into your art and including your entire life and experiences. And so working with memory, but also letting that inspire into imagination. And so I feel like whatever you want to do, training is at the core of it. And learning, and then there's the ongoing practice of that through your entire lifetime. And to have that hunger as an artist is a gift, and that we're seekers. We're never done, and no matter what age you are, we're still always trying to improve and expand, and it's a way of being. And if you haven't had any training, whether it's in art or acting, then go find some and learn from all these experienced people on this podcast. And I'm happy to do another one, and address anything specific. But I love listening to you all, and I thank you. And it gives me so much to think about, listening to your work experiences and practical situations and challenges, and that helps me. I listen to you, and it opens my mind of how I can help animators. And so if I could stay on this call longer, that would be my question, and maybe I could stay on for one more minute. Like, how would you like me as professionals at the top of your field to help animators? That would be my last question I would throw out to the group here.
All right, go ahead, guys.
Storyboard artists.
I'll throw in. One of the things that we have as a tool that we sometimes forget about is the fact that we're working in extreme slow motion all of the time. It takes us several seconds at best to draw a single panel of a storyboard, and the actual screen time of that panel may be a fraction of a second. So we are essentially slowing ourselves down to micro speed as we puzzle out all the movement that a figure is going through, and then by extension, all of the mental power and all the emotion that's driving that movement. And I think it behooves us to take advantage of the fact that we are seeing it in such extreme slow motion. It's almost like yoga. And I think it's something we forget to think of as one of our superpowers. And I think if you keep that in mind, if stay aware and conscious of it, you can use it to great advantage to create scenes with empathy and drive and authenticity and realism.
Thank you. I love to live in those microseconds. What was I calling it, Dave, when we taught last time? Micro choices.
It was that, Rachel. I mean, it was.
No, but I came up with a name for it that I was teaching.
That one I don't know. We'll trademark it. We'll come up with it. You have to trademark it.
I love that feedback, because actually that's what we did. We did through the repetition exercise, we were breaking down the seconds and how behavior changes in a second. Remember, Dave, we were doing that?
Oh, yeah.
And how people could understand that, how we operate as human beings, that a second is worth everything.
Yeah. That's where the emotion is usually within that, a change of emotion and a change.
Right. And so what you do as artists, and I had revisionists ask me questions about that. How do you this woman at DreamWorks said, well, how do I make it interesting? I can't do too much to the art, but I can do a little bit per frame. And so we were able to slow it down to figure out how much behavior and thought goes in those milliseconds. So is that what you were referring to in that question?
Did that answer that for you, Tim?
Yep, we're talking the same language.
There you go.
How important it is, right? And to fill that in. And so I did. And, when I think of the exercise I created, I'm happy to email that to you. I'd love to get your feedback on it. Because I try out, I've created so many exercises that I try out with animators, and I'm always revising them to help them.
Rachel, tell us, where can people find you? So where can if people are listening to this?
Yeah, my Instagram is at, I don't know if you can write it in the chat. I'm on my phone, so I don't have the chat. It's at Rachel Bailit Teaching. And I'm on, social media, but it's at RACHEL BAILIT. And
at Rachel Bailit Teaching.
Yeah, .com. If you're on the East Coast, I teach out of Boston Casting. And if you're on the West Coast, I teach at, not .com. That's my Instagram.
Oh.
And if you're on the West Coast, I'm at the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute in West Hollywood. I'm at the Animation Guild with Dave. I'm at Warner Animation Group, DreamWorks, and who knows where else I'll be this year.
Well, Rachel, before you leave, I have to throw one comment in. I wrote a scene for my acting reel, and I asked you to perform in it, and it came with like several different temperatures that Brad talked about. There was like this cool, warm, sensitive part. There was this very powerful, kind of in control part, and there was this panic, oh my God, we're gonna die part. And you were able to like glide in and out of all those temperatures and just really nail it. And I just want to say before you leave that I'm very, very impressed with your acting skills and your performing skills and the choices that you make for the moments on a script that I wrote for my acting reel. And I just want to say that you're an amazing talent.
Thank you. That means so much to me. You have no idea. I love working with you, Kimbrough. I can't wait to see that footage. I know we're going to get to it.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's really
Eventually. We had a great time. And thank you for writing that. And acting is my primary joy. And that is where all my teaching comes out of, because I'm so passionate about it. And so it's an extension of what I love to do, which is to act.
Well, your performance inspired me to make it an actual, a real thing. So I think I'm probably going to turn it into something. So.
Oh, good. I look forward to seeing what that is. And Kimbrough is a man of many talents. Those of you watching, so many, I can't even begin to count.
Stop.
Well, actually, I was going to ask that very question, Stephen. Are you a storyboard artist?
Yeah. I do storyboard art. I draw. I'm a fine arts minor from college, and I do graphic arts. And I haven't really dove into doing storyboarding as a profession because my comedy and my filmmaking and my podcast takes up so much of my bandwidth. But since I've been working with Dave on developing this pitching using humor in your storyboarding, I've resurrected like all of my storyboarding skills and dusted off all my storyboard kind of tools, and I'm getting back into it with the help of being under Dave's wing, and it's pretty exciting.
Cool.
And Rachel, we will definitely set up a seminar. Either we do it in person or we'll do it online. So we'll talk. And actually, I wanted to say to everybody.
Speaking of talking, I mean, there's a number of people who have not spoken once this entire evening.
Oh, well, we'll get to everybody. We're hitting most of the people. Well, some of the people here, Brad, are interested observers, and other people. You guys are the guests, so everybody speaking who's a guest right now has gotten a chance to do that. We'll open some stuff up to people in the chat when some of the guests that are here that can talk.
Okay, I'll look forward to seeing this and reading the chat. I'm gonna get some sleep. But
All right,
really,
Rachel, and
thank you.
I'm gonna just put it out there when we put this out on YouTube for anybody who wants to, or even here, if you want to learn more, if you're interested in like a seminar with Rachel and I, tell us what you want us to, what things that you would be interested in from an acting standpoint, and we can kind of tailor something, right, Rach?
Love to tailor
that.
it.
So,
Sure.
okay, so we'll hear the thoughts and comments. All right,
Okay.
Rachel, stay safe. Thank you for being
Hey,
here.
you too. Bye,
Good night,
everyone.
Rachel. Nice meeting you.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Inspiring.
Yeah.
Bye.
So, all right. So, so Tim, I know, like, I don't know how, like, I always thank people for their time and everything and stuff, and everybody has lives. So I had asked Tim to come on a little bit to talk about some of his, if you had anything to pitch or anything to talk about. So Tim, do you want to talk about any, some other stuff besides animated stuff before you go?
Sure, I'll talk about my puppy.
Oh, hello, puppy. What's the puppy's name?
This is Cosmo,
Hi, Cosmo.
and he's a Chihuahua, and I've had him for 3 weeks now.
Aw,
Training is going very well,
That's great.
and
So does he have you potty trained yet?
he's still working really hard.
Tim just had an accident before we came on, right, Tim?
Now I was just making sure he didn't need to interrupt me.
Oh, he's a cutie.
Yep, he's loaded with energy, and he really helps me get through quarantine.
Oh, that's great. What a cute
Aw.
dog. He's cute. Yeah, he's a cutie pie. Yeah,
Yep.
Dogs are the best, man. They're really, really, he's so cute. Is he a rescue, Tim? Did you get him at a shelter?
His mom was a rescue,
Okay.
and she turned out to be pregnant.
Ah,
And so the word went out. Now we have 3 dogs looking for homes, and my girlfriend and I, we were ready for a second one, so we chose him.
he's cute. Nice choice. He's a cutie pie.
Yeah.
That's a good choice. So how about Pitsberg? How's things go? Are you wrapped up with Pitsberg now? Do you want to share anything?
I'm still working on it. Just to backtrack a little bit, it's a science fiction multimedia webcomic.
Mhm.
It's not spelled like the city. It's Pitsberg. And I've been working on it for a little over 4 years. This is going to be the final year. And it's a complete experiment in using the web for comics and finding different ways to manipulate the format. I'm using the infinite canvas approach, which allows you to go as far as you want in any direction. There are some animated segments of it. There are some pieces of it that read vertically. There are others that read horizontally. And there are 3 different narratives that weave together into a single story. So
like, where can we go to see this?
it's at Pitsberg.com. And that's why I spelled it for you, Pitsberg.
Hold on. We have a chat thing here, so I'll type that in. So
Okay,
go ahead, Tim. Where are we finding this again?
Pitsberg.com.
Okay.
So
Pits-
Pitsberg.com.
That is correct.
All
It wants to
right.
spell correct. How amazing. It's like, you idiot. It's not spelled like that.
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
I describe it as multimedia because some segments of it are animated, and I've also got an original soundtrack that's being written by a friend of mine,
It's very cool.
a musician.
Do you post it in episodes, or are you just posting a continuous narrative? piece by
One
piece?
chapter at a time. However long that chapter takes to make, I take that time and then I put it up. So there are several months between chapters.
Wow.
The latest one is going to go up hopefully within a couple of weeks,
Wow.
and then I'll be in the home stretch to the finale.
Tim, do you think Marvel and DC are going to go online the web and eliminate the distribution thing? Is that what's going to happen?
Well, I'm sure we've all been reading about how life is going to change post-quarantine because of all the things we've learned. For one thing, I'm sure everybody would like the skies to stay clean. That's been one really, really nice thing about all this. But we're also going to be learning, I think, in the near future about how media is going to be affected. movie theaters are losing their foundation day by day. The comic book business has been frozen for about 2 months now. And one thing we've learned about comics is that if you give readers an opportunity to jump off, they will jump off. Because it's kind of a habitual thing to go into a comic book store every week and buy the latest issue of whatever you're reading. But if you don't have that push, you may learn that this is not as necessary as you once thought. And once comic book stores reopen, we may find that the audience has reduced itself by significant numbers. I hope not, but weirder things have happened.
Yeah.
And so the next place to take comics is to the web. But that's a whole different arena with its own push and pull. And in a way, it's already gone there when you have a site like Comixology that updates with new comics all the time.
Yeah.
But we're also talking about a generation of people who prefer, and I'm kind of one of them. I still prefer to read comics on paper, despite the fact that I've completely left paper behind in my own webcomic, and I love it. The tyranny of paper has prevented a lot of comics from being published in the past, a lot of books too.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you introduce paper, you've got a physical part of the process, and mechanical things. And
it's cost prohibitive.
You've got product that then it needs to be stored and shipped and all that stuff. So
and it's got a fraction of the readership of online comics.
That's right.
You're doing really, really well if you sell 1,500 units of a comic, and you can expect 100,000, 200,000 eyeballs online, I'm told.
Yeah.
Indeed. And the freedom that I found working on webcomics over the past 4 years is something I don't want to give up. So that's kind of been my own version of that quarantine.
Well, on the other hand, how do you monetize it?
I don't.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
So this is like your after hours freebie project.
Exactly.
Passion project.
Well, my career goal was to get a regular gig that would pay the bills, so I didn't have to go scrounging to sell a comic book project to some publisher.
Yeah.
I could just do it on my own. And that's exactly what I'm doing now, and I've never been happier. So all you had to do was give up the idea of putting it on paper and making a profit from it, at least initially.
Well, Tim, here's the thing that I'll tell you a little bit. When I first moved out here in '96, I was lucky enough to get picked up by Image. My buddy and I had a comic called Megahertz. And initially we were going to self-publish the book. And at the time, we sold less than 5,000 copies. As soon as we went to Image, we sold like 150,000 copies of the book. So it was the same book. That was but you realize the power of marketing. But I guess my point is with this, though, there was something restrictive about that. Even though we had, gotten to a bigger publisher, the thing that you just said is the thing that always fascinated me the most. It's autonomy from almost anything. Even though Image was great and we, worked with Eric Larson and he was fantastic, there's a sense now of freedom that you have to feel because you can do whatever you want to do. Like you were just describing, if you want to put animation in there, you can put animation in there. You want to work a certain way, you can work a certain way. And you're not limited to paper. You're not even limited to the size of the paper. If you want, you can make it whatever you want. And that's exciting. That's an exciting storytelling proposition because then it becomes limitless. I'm sure you're finding that. Now your canvas is opened up in a way that you couldn't do it before. It was restricted in how you can't change the shape of paper. So
yeah, that's right. A lot of the webcomics that I looked at before I took this approach were still locked into the idea that they could one day go to paper.
Yeah. And
so they were self-limited to the paper format.
Yeah.
Every page image was still this.
Right.
Well, it's still that way now for one of the sites tune or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have to like format everything for the cell phone screen, which is like a vertical rectangle.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to look at your comic book, and everything you've been saying, it's like, ooh, cool. I have to see that.
Yeah, that's a cool. I agree. It's very cool. It's cool stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a tool that just keeps giving back. The more I experiment, the more fun I have.
Tim, where are you going to find your voiceover talent? Is there voiceover talent involved in this, or just comic?
I only needed one voice, and it needed to be a computer voice, so I found one online. I found a website where you can just type in whatever you want it to say, and then it'll spit it back out in a pre-recorded voice. Once you see how it's used, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Voice acting was not really a requirement in this case. However, once you get something done and get it out there and it gets exposure, there's always the chance that it could evolve into something else. So, I'm thinking long-term as well. If something else happens with it, great. If not, then I'm having the time of my life making it right now.
Well, that's the thing, Tim. It's intellectual property. So you're getting it out there. And I mean, yeah, like it's invaluable. Like you can't place a value on that because it's intellectual property and it's yours. So, it will outlive you. Hopefully in the time that you're alive, people will give you lots of money to make a film or do something like that. Would be nice. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're getting to put out a book your way and the way you want to do it.
It's not even a book. That's like a wrong choice of words.
Well, you're putting out a project.
It's a limiting choice of words.
All right.
You're putting a physical object print container onto it, whereas what Tim was describing is just like, it can be anything you want. Actually, one of my fantasies, I won't tell you because you might do it. Never mind.
Brad, I'm going to have you on you have to come here every week now, and you have to like set me straight every week. So I'm sorry, Tim, but your project lives on, your vision lives on and what you want to do.
Sure.
And, that's a really exciting and rewarding thing to have that as a to be able to do that, and everybody can do it. I mean, that's the nice thing about it. Like,
it was really weird. Like I was like doing a panel at OntarioCon last May, and it was a panel on how to break into the animation industry, or how to earn a living as an animator. One of the kids in the audience asked if you could do this, and I said, yeah, you could do that. Or can you do this? And I said, yeah, you could do that. It's almost like he was asking me to give him permission.
Permission to do it.
When it's like, sounds to me like you know what you want to do. Why are you asking me? He probably knows more about how to do it than I do, because I'm a 60-year-old digital immigrant,
But I think people want there's a sense of I think there is a sense of permission. I think that though it's your expertise, and it's like, in your expert opinion, do you feel that that's the wise choice to make? That's the real question. Well, it's true.
Aqua Teen Hunger Force. I mean, give me a break. Big hit. And it's just like, okay, we're in a different world than I was brought up in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different world, but also at the same time, it's I do think that there are rules, and the rules are there to be, as they say, to be broken. And and the things that you do, there is a language to film. If you start you can build the language and add to it, but I still think that there's a language that's there, and if you start speaking gibberish, most people are gonna tune out. Even if you start speaking gibberish in a way that starts making sense, now you've created a new language, and it's in there. But I don't, I think that the language is still language, and you still have things to work, some parameters you have to work in to make things legible and read. So that's my opinion. Maybe what do I know? You're right. What do I know? So it's.
I'm sure you're right. Well, you know, it's like oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I've reviewed a lot of portfolios over the years, and when I was back in comics, and one of the things that I told people, probably more than any other thing, was if you wait for permission to draw something, you will probably never get it. So just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Well, what was I going to say? Oh, what the acting, Rachel, what she was talking about was, you know, it's one of the things that like really bugs me about Ang Lee movies. Not Ang Lee. Never mind. Like a Chinese fight movie guy. He starts at 10 and there's nowhere to go but up. You know.
Are you talking about John Woo?
Yeah,
John Woo. John Woo.
It's like, you know, it's like, well, what can you do? Or it's like,
it's Michael Bay.
A Metallica album. It's like, you know, it's like you start at 10. Where do you go? Well, I know some people like Metallica. I mean, I listened to it and went, "Whoa, this gets old really fast."
No. Well, I mean, one of the things, like I always bring up Michael Bay. He's always my example of this. Like he's, you know,
he's everybody's example of
this. He is. I mean, poor Michael Bay. Poor billionaire Michael Bay.
I don't like his movies either, Dave.
Oh, good, Chris. Thank you. So, you know, but he's the same way. Like he's always trying to up himself, and there's never a quiet moment, even in the quiet moments. And it's true, and it comes back to what somebody was saying before. Chris, you were saying it about like you know, the music analogy. It's like you don't want everything to be played at 10. You know, you have to temper it, and you have quiet scenes, and it lets people catch up, and it lets people catch their breath. But if every scene is like a rotating camera pan shot, you know, even when they're sitting and having lunch, it starts to get overwhelming visually. Like you don't know when you're like, I need a break here. And he doesn't know when to do that. And I think that's kind of sad.
Well, I think you just become numb. I mean, I think you become numb before you realize you're not.
Or you've got to puke.
Yeah, or you know, you have that movie going experience where you feel nothing. You leave the theater and you go, okay, there goes $10.
Yeah. Yep.
And like, yeah, I really like the movies that I'll leave the theater or return it to Netflix, and that movie will come back to haunt me. You know, I'm thinking about some of those scenes, and I want to revisit that. Those are the movies that
right. They affect you emotionally. It always comes back to this.
Yeah, they hit you in the gut.
Yeah, you know, I mean, to use Brad's analogy about like I always think that it's like the guys in the 80s that were the shredders, you know, the guys that were like, you know, with the guitar and how fast they could play and what they could do. Give me Eric Clapton or Keith Richards any day of the week. You know, it's like, give me the blues players that make you feel something, that are slow and, you know, or hit you with I was never impressed by that type of guitar play. And I'm not impressed by filmmakers that want to just slam everything at you a million miles an hour. And do I think that there's merit in the work and something to study for action stuff? Absolutely. Like, I think that, you know, there's definitely things. I'm sure we've all aped something from somebody that aped something from Michael Bay and put it somewhere.
Well, I tell people, mentees, that, you know, you can learn as much from studying stuff you don't like as from studying stuff you do like.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You know,
there's a whole film class in the movie The Room.
Yes. Yes. It's, you know, and it's true. The things you don't like, why don't you like it? You know, why don't you like? We should do that. We should have a film thing and watch The Room now, Chris. We're gonna have to
I had a really interesting experience.
So easy.
I was doing a talk on the difference between storyboards and comics at CAPS, and I analyzed the Death of Superman from like the early '90s. And I started out, that comic book was symbolic of everything I hated about '90s comic books. But then when I started looking at it and really analyzing it, I was going, oh my God, this is really good. I couldn't believe it. It was like the last 10 pages are awesome. And just in terms of the staging and the ideas.
I'll have to read that again.
Take a look
Are
at
you
it
talking
again.
about the one?
The one where everything is
pages?
everything is a splash page.
Splash page, the Dan Jurgens
And
one.
it's like it starts out like they punch each other to death, right? And
Yeah.
that's one page. The next page is you're not looking at them falling at the ground. You're looking at them falling to the ground, being photographed through Jimmy Olsen's lens with Lois in the background. And then you're not looking at their dead bodies on the ground. You're looking at Ma and Pa Kent in their living room, looking at it through the TV screen. And then, having done that, then you cut outside to 2 double-page spreads that both work as a left-to-right pan, going with eye read, where at first you're looking at this, the left-hand side of the double-page spread is a crowd of onlookers going, oh my God, and the right side of the double-page pan is a long shot of Lois holding dead Superman. And then the last page is you're panning from Lois, a closer shot of Lois holding Superman, to Jimmy Olsen taking one last photograph on the very last page. And then the back cover is the tattered flag, which serves as the front cover. And I was looking at it going, fuck, I hated this. I remember talking with Alex Toth about it, how he was just like so infuriated by that comic.
But he was infuriated by pretty much everything.
He's infuriated by a lot of things. And I was basically talking him down. You know, it's not, you know, it sucks, but it's not that bad. But I was looking at it like 4 months ago going, whoa. I mean, it's wretched, but it's brilliant.
Okay.
Just take a look at it again. I'll tell you.
I guess I'll have to revisit that one.
Yeah.
Thanks for spoiling the ending.
Sorry. Spoiler alert.
Wait, what? Yeah, but what you're talking about is empathy. I mean, everything is emotion. And, instead of just a big punch fest, it's everything that you're describing. It's like you're seeing it, the death of a son. And it's on TV, and and you have the
world
whole Superman,
is watching.
like the whole world. Well, but the whole world's watching. But in that moment, it's his parents that are watching him die.
Right.
And the woman who loves him is and his friend, the kid who idolizes him, helpless that they can't do anything, and yet they're doing their job of reporting and taking pictures of this, of this event. Even though it's their friend and someone that they love who's being killed. And there's a powerful element to that that's in there.
Needs though is like with the Kents, I mean, they need to cut to a commercial break or the power goes out. So they're frantic to see what's happening and they're dialing their neighbors on the phone. I mean, you need a laugh in there. Something.
Well, that's the thing that's
as I remember it's just intensity for intense sake.
Right. It was everything I'm talking about.
Every movement is like
everything was overdone. It was ludicrous. It was so over the top. I'm just talking about the last 10 pages. The ending. The rest of the book is just like PU.
Well,
the last 10 pages.
God knows that the DC Comics has mined that Death of Superman about as far as you can mine something, I think. So
and the aftermath is just like, oh, come on.
So
hey, you got to hand it to them, though. They sure can, didn't they?
They sure what? You froze up there, Tim. What?
You got to hand it to him. He stayed dead.
He did. He stayed dead for, what, a year, right? He was dead for a year.
Dead for a year.
So, that's exciting. That's always exciting stuff. Dave, we haven't heard from you in a while. So what's any, like, is there any Death of Superman anecdotes that you'd like to share or tell?
I was just a big fanboy, making the Tuesday run or the Tuesday for new comics. It was interesting, Tim. You were talking about how a break in comics kind of gives you permission to say, do I really need to spend $45 a week buying free comics?
Yeah.
And
I
mean,
think it's 50 now. I think
is it now? I mean,
yeah, something
I'm
like
kind
that.
of in that same place. You know, when I came here to Cleveland, finding a comic shop that was similar to the ones that we go to out in Los Angeles, House of Secrets, or someplace that if you walk in there, it's almost like a mini comic book convention. You can find all kinds of stuff in there. And here in Cleveland, there's just not quite as many. It's mostly baseball cards. And oh, by the way, we have a rack of comics in the back, you know. So once you find a place, and then it just becomes a habit to go and buy comics. So
it's a social gathering, I think, too.
Well, it is in LA because
depending.
you know, because well, for a number of reasons, it was a place for us to kind of hang out outside of work. You know, we could, if we were in animation, we could talk about comics.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
And so and then the other thing is that a lot of us were doing comics while we were doing animation. You know, so we always went to pick up whatever, you know, somebody that we were working with, what they were doing, if it came out that week. So that's, so I, you know, you kind of have that love-hate relationship with comics. You got to go, well, don't I have enough? You know, I've got, I paid to have boxes and boxes and boxes of comic books moved to Cleveland when I got here. And you just kind of go, well, you know, what am I really going to see something that I haven't seen? And then, you know, you pick up previews, you go, oh, I got to have that. I got to have this. And I got to have that. Yeah. And of course, if you have a couple of years in your career, you're making some decent coin, then you kind of graduate from comic books to the bigger ticket items, you know, the books.
Yeah.
You know, and talking about books, you know, I'm looking at Tim and Brad and Chris, their studios behind them, and you know, it's funny. We all look the same here. You know, we've all got
Well, I mean, the same room.
Yeah, really. You know,
I'm
looking at Brad's and over his shoulder while he's talking about something, and I see Humbug, and I'm going, wait a minute, that's I got. That's my story. You know, so it's like it's just a different configuration, but I'm seeing the same books there at Brad's house that I got sitting here right behind me. And Chris, well, Chris is that's like the Bat Cave there, you know.
It is. He has the ECs, those ECs.
Oh yeah. Well, what you're not seeing is that, you know, Chris also has the Bat computer, the Univac. You know, he's just feeding cards in there, busting crime. You know, in between. You know, don't
got his Flash shirt on. So
don't think he's sitting idle. You know, Chris is out fighting crime at night. You know, he gets on the cycle. You know.
You know what I have been doing though? I've been selling my comics on eBay.
Oh, have you?
It's astonishing, like books that I bought for $10. I didn't even realize. I think it's a Fantastic Four issue, like 47 or something. Yeah. That's the first appearance of the Black Panther. It's like a $700 comic book.
Oh, I know.
It's
on
crazy.
The other hand,
and then I you know. I'll be retiring soon, like you, Dave, and it's like I'll probably be in the state. And do I want to lug all these comics with me? And most of the stuff I have in trades anyway.
Yeah.
So I can always refer to it, and a lot of it's online. You know,
I don't blame you at all.
I $700 for it. I mean, it's yours.
I have a lot. Mine are the '80s and mid '70s kind of stuff, like. You know, but I mean, some of that stuff is worth a lot of money too at this point.
Yeah, you just have to do a little research.
Yep, it's you know with what's there for sure.
Yeah.
So hey, so Brad, you want to? I want to change the subject just a little bit. You want to talk about your the committee that you're heading up for the guild?
Sure thing.
Okay.
Stephen Miller and I are starting the Experienced Workers Committee.
And this is for the Animation Guild.
For the Animation Guild, it's we had our first meeting via Zoom on April 13th, and yesterday, I finally got off my butt and started following up. A bunch of people RSVP'd who didn't show up at the meeting, and I contacted them today, say, hey, you know, our next meeting's on June 8th. Hope you come to that one. And if they had some problem, like maybe we were technically inept and they couldn't gain access, I want to hear about it. And I sent a mass media blitz out to everybody who signed up on the EWC Facebook page. So everybody who signed up got an email from me saying that the tag leadership needs to get their contact information. And we now have a dedicated email, ewc@tag.org, that everybody who signs up on the list that Steve Kaplan is constructing will get all the emails. They'll get all the emails.
Brad,
Okay.
what does a committee do?
Yes, I was
Well,
going to
that's
say
a very
that's-
good question.
Well, thank you.
I started it because I couldn't get work after I left Bob's Burgers in November of 2017. I worked 3 months in 2018 and 3 months out of 2019. And I worked on 2018 selling a show, selling Bless the Hearts, that was picked up by Fox. And I was the first person to interview with the new producers in November of 2018 for the January start date of 2019. I went in with the attitude as, okay, so when do I start? They didn't call me up until April, when there's only 2 months left in the production. When we have a better idea of our needs now. And it's hard not to take that one personally. And yet that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in, what is my part? What can I do? In fact, I talked about that, Dave, at your big storyboard convention 4 or 5 months ago. It's like, what is it that I'm doing? Maybe I don't know. Do I have BO? I mean,
everybody has BO, Brad.
Well, on the other hand, I'm real high maintenance. I don't want to tell stories out of class, but I don't know if I would have wanted to work with me these last few months on season 2 of Bob's Burgers. Maybe I've gotten hard to manage. I don't know. I'm just looking at all that stuff. These days, I'm more interested in artists, not because of their skill level, but how they sell themselves and how they interface with their clients.
Well, one of the things that I'll tell you, Brett, I think it's real important what you're doing, because at the Guild, we always talked, in having sat on the executive board, you're walking different lines and, different needs. And there's a lot of influx of young artists that have come into the Guild. And, that's the future. There's no doubt that, and there's always going to be an influx of new artists. There's also always going to be older, experienced artists, because the younger artists are going to someday be the older, experienced artists. So, what you're doing is a very important thing, because a lot of people in our industry do feel that there's a sense of ageism that impacts people when you reach a certain age. But, I think sometimes part of what it is some of the older artists don't embrace the technological things as quickly or as easily, because you're used to working a certain way, and that's how you work, and that's the way that you've worked, and it's gotten you work for many years. And also, it's your process. It's how you do your work. So now you're asked to change it, and people are very resistant to that. I find that sometimes that is the biggest reason why people don't get, a chance on things, that a younger artist might be more technologically, but having said that, there's a myriad of reasons. There's a myriad of reasons that go down the line. And I think it's a really important thing for older artists and experienced artists to feel like they have a place where they can talk about these things, as well as, I think what has to happen is there has to be a merging of, to a certain degree, of the young and the old.
Well, that was actually one of the reasons for the bye. Bye, Tim.
Oh, Tim's taking off. Tim, are you leaving?
Tim.
Bye, Tim.
Bye, Tim. Thanks for being here, Tim.
So it's like mentorship. Part of our the committee's mission is to mentor younger artists. And in fact, I can only speak for myself. When I was one of the reasons I wanted to become a comic book artist was because so I could be mentored by older artists.
Sure.
I hungered for that. And when I finally found somebody at Bernard Dere at DIC, he provided me with that mentorship. He took me under his wing in my second year in the business. And I'm not joking. In some ways, I think Bernard saved my life. Because I was working blind. You know, you were all talking, Dave, about, you were talking about having me like down your throat about your changes.
Yeah.
My first year in the business, I got no changes ever. The only feedback I got was, you know, the director at Hanna-Barbera gave me another episode to storyboard.
Yeah.
No information at all. And when I went and did my first storyboard at DIC, Bernard was my director. It was time for me to show him my roughs. I showed him my roughs, and he said, "Do you want to do your own changes?" And I said, "Sure." What I really meant was, "Yes, please, thank you, thank you, thank you." And he redrew on the spot 2/3 of my storyboard with me watching it. Just like little thumbnail drawings down the margins. And I was sitting there going, but I followed the script, you know, because I was taught to do an H and B, left to right pan, cut the script out, tape it down. And he said, "Yes, but is this not better?" And I went, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah.
I mean, it's so much better. I just didn't know it was allowed. And so when I did like the next part of my work where I was, you know, did his changes and then started work on my own stuff again, I had this epiphany that was like mystical in nature, where I was like, oh my God, I can make this real. I can do Hitchcock and Spielberg with this. This seems to be what this guy wants, as a matter of fact. And it was just like, I'm so grateful. In fact, after like 30 years, I finally reconnected with Bernard like last year on Facebook. It's like, I love you, man.
Well, you know, talking about Hitchcock, I was going to say earlier when we were kind of talking about our early days at Dake. Well, but what I was going to say is that, you know, Brad was the first guy to show me his process of making a shot list.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that was one of the first steps where I kind of began to realize that I could just draw funny pictures, or I could start bringing filmmaking into what I was doing. And the idea of coming up with a shot list, you know, now, I mean, I don't remember how closely you adhered to your shot list once you put it down. But I tried it, and for me, it was like, okay, I've got this, I have a safety net. If I can't think of something else that I'd much rather do, or a better shot, I know I can rely on this. But at least I've kind of thought out a progression of how these pictures are going to piece together, so that I'm looking at the story, I'm looking at the scene in its entirety, from start to finish. So, you know, I always tell people, they go, well, how do you go so fast? Well, I said, because I've trained my mind to think about 5 shots. You know, it's like chess. I'm thinking 5 shots while I'm drawing this one.
Start at the end and work backwards.
Right.
But for me, I developed that technique out of dire necessity, because I'd be working on those war toy shows where you'd have like 10 characters fighting each other with their war robots or their giant vehicles. And if I didn't do that, I could waste a day's work, because I'd be just boarding along sequentially, and I'd come to like, oh, and by the way, all this time, this other character's been over here. And she's gonna come in, right?
Yeah,
and
you gotta
just
go back.
Fucks up everything you've done. So I would just go through and write down, okay, shot 1, this happens. Shot 2, that happens.
Yeah.
And that way, I don't waste time.
You don't paint yourself to a corner.
Yeah, it's a shot list.
So that was so that was really, you know, that was a real big revelation for me. You know, it's thing, because it was funny is that, you know, it like, at least the way I learned, and I don't know about the rest of it, but you know, when I arrived in Los Angeles and kind of fell into storyboarding, kind of, you know, backed into it, you know, I mean, I arrived with a lot of understanding and things that I just picked up along the way, being taught or being self-taught, or
Well, you went to
from,
the Hubert School.
well, yeah, but we didn't, you know, we didn't learn filmmaking, you know, but you know, at least I wasn't interpreting what I was seeing as filmmaking. That came later when I kind of went, oh, now I see what all this was about. You know, everything, you know, and so now you've got somebody who kind of says, well, no, you do this. You start kind of filling in the blanks in between what you arrived knowing instinctively or what you learned and picked up along the way, and real cinematic thinking. And you start closing the gap between the two. And eventually, once you've learned those things, that's when I think your creative voice really comes out. Mm-hmm. Because now, you know, you've got the foundation. Now you're just saying, okay, you know, yeah, I could use a hammer, but what if I try this and to build this thing? And you kind of go, see, that was the inspiration, was seeing beyond this and going and putting together something that was more interesting, that was your vision, your way of doing it. And that was a great lesson. You know?
Yep.
Well, actually, I want to give you props, Dave. What I was talking about earlier, my interest has gone more and more to be not less and less about the work itself than how artists style, how they present themselves, how they deal with their coworkers and with the bosses and their underlings. And I got to say, I envy your bonhomme. I don't know what's the word I want. Your easy rapport. I was like, it was fun hanging out with you in your office, let's just say.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad. I mean, it's you know, it's one of the great things about this industry is that, you know, you meet so many people with such diverse personalities, but there's that one thing that kind of binds us. It's the art, it's the people who inspire us, and the passion that we have to share it with somebody who doesn't know it, and or you find a kindred spirit and you kind of go, hey, did you see this? And and then we start dissecting it together and really going, okay, I'm not crazy. He sees it the same way I do, you know? Yeah. And you know, that's the fun of it too. And I think that's what I was saying in the first episode of this podcast that I did, was that I found the people in this industry to be overall extremely generous with their knowledge, with their time, and their willingness to share and to say, here, if you want to know, I'm happy to show you.
Thank God.
Really.
You know, thank God. Like, because I think that's a real. I hope that anybody who's younger and listening to this and watching this, you know, a lot of my students, Dave, maybe even your students, tell them, you know, I hope that they understand, because I don't know, sometimes I don't know if they do or not, the value of, and, you know, it's not like we're some old geezers that don't have, you know, that are going to tell, you know, it really, there is a value in seeking people out, like Brad was saying, for that knowledge, that experience of what's gone before, and how much that will take your work from one place and like almost overnight, because you're gaining all of this wisdom and experience of people that have 30, 40 years in the business, and they're willing to share all of that knowledge with you, so you don't make the same mistakes, and you learn from that. And there's such a value in that.
You know, I had a conversation with one of my students this afternoon who, this particular student kind of fell victim a little bit to the coronavirus, but also this student just kind of started falling behind it, and it just became a big slippery slope, and they decided to disappear for a couple of weeks. You know, just radio silence. And, I was in talking with this student, I said, an employer, a studio, puts more value in somebody who is upfront and says, hey, look, okay, I'm behind, or I need some extra time, I screwed up, I didn't do it right, or whatever, than just to disappear. And I said, and you're hearing this from the voice of experience. I did that at some time or another. And it never works out well, and you feel horrible about it.
Yep.
And you hope that, people won't remember for the next time, but the thing is that, they might not be happy on the other end, but at least they know how to work with it and make allowances for it. Yeah. And so, I find that not only do people in this industry share their successes, but they, as a teaching moment, they're very willing to share their mistakes.
Yes. Cautionary tales.
Cautionary tales. And it just helps, it may not head something bad off at the past, but I think it certainly gives the next generation a little something more to consider before they decide to go disappear for 3 weeks.
It's perspective, and it's, and I don't mean the 1 point perspective kind, but it's mistakes. I mean, if you've worked in this business long enough, you're going to have regrets and mistakes, right? That's kind of how that goes.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand. So, any mistakes that we make, and you're willing to share those mistakes, you're doing it in the hope that that person will not repeat that mistake that you made, because you know how lousy you felt or how it affected your career in doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing. It's a big, and God bless anybody who hasn't done that. Like, I give them a lot of props, because I think, it's human nature. It's like, sometimes it's that fear. It's like, oh, if I call and tell them I'm behind, maybe they won't notice that I haven't turned the work in a week,
Yeah, really.
And no, it's like they're freaking out over it. And it's much better to tell people, like, look, I'm behind. And sure. So there's no doubt. There's no doubt about that. So, we're coming up on 2 hours on this thing. Dave, I always love having you do this stuff.
I'm happy to do it anytime, Dave.
And I swear to, like, you're so easy. Like, I love having you do this. Like, it's almost like I feel like I have a co-host with this stuff when you're here. It's so nice. So, and do you have anything that you wanted to pitch, or anything that you like, anything going on that you wanted to?
Right now, all I'm doing is, like I said, I'm wrapping up the school year. The nice thing is, I mean, in the past I've been teaching storyboarding and concept design, but I think next year, what I'm really looking forward to is that I'm going to be more of the story guy at Cleveland Institute of Art, and kind of help these kids understand the components of story, and how to build character through the story, so I think I'll be more involved with juniors and seniors. That's when they start making their films, and in their junior year they start working as a team, writing and making a film, and then when they're seniors they do their own film by themselves. And I just think we've taught them technical. We've taught them perspective, we taught them anatomy and how to develop and that type of thing. So now really focusing on story and developing character, and just like what Rachel was talking about creating from the inside out. And if we can get that foundation in them early on, because so many of them they get caught up in the razzle dazzle of how cool it's going to look, and then and then they're 3/4 of the way through their film and they kind of go, it's not working. It's not working. And they go, fix it. I don't know. And you're just going to go, well, we got 3 weeks. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
So the thing is that it will come to play in whatever they choose to do in the animation industry. Because everything involves a story, whether it's a storyboard, character design, background design. Everything has to be purpose and a
For
reason
story.
to be there for story.
Yeah.
So if we can get them early. So I'm doing that.
Good. They're lucky to have you.
Doing some writing and you know, just chilling.
All right, Chris, what are you up to? Got anything going on?
Absolutely nothing. So if anybody
Cool.
wants to give me a job,
All right.
I am.
I need
All right,
my
you're
driveway
ready.
paved, Chris. If you want to come out to Ohio and pave the driveway
I
for
will
me.
do that. I am willing to do that.
Social distance, though. Keep social distance.
Right.
Oh,
You
you
have-
can,
Chris, you
you
have
can
your
count
art
on
up
that.
books. You have some great art stuff. You have prints and stuff, don't you? Where can people find your stuff?
On my website, chrisrutkowski.net, or my blog, which is impactedfelines.com.
All right, hold on a second. So should I type this in for everybody? Hold on. Let me try to do this here. All right, impacted felines.
Right.
.com?
Yeah.
.com?
Impacted Felines at Blogspot, maybe it is.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I don't want to put the wrong thing. At Blogspot?
Impacted Felines, you'd find it.
All right, I'll put that in so people can look that up. And
Cool.
also, I will put your name here too, so people can find you, because you have great stuff, and
Thank
you
you.
have, I know you have some of your art books and stuff too, and prints and stuff.
Been nice having some time off, but yeah, I'm ready to go back to work for
Yeah,
sure.
dude, you'll get, there's plenty. I'm sure that any studio will be lucky to have you. So
Hey, but quickly, can I ask Dave, how far away are you from the Kimbrough school?
It's about a 6.5 hour drive.
Oh,
Six and a
okay.
half,
So,
7 hours,
yeah, you're not like right next door.
No. The whole state of Pennsylvania between where I'm at and New Jersey.
You probably even have, I'd say it's about 6 hours, because I 80, man, take 80 or 46 or whatever and go.
Yeah, I used to when I drove from Youngstown, I would just hop on 80 and take 80 right across and into the Water Gap and through Wharton right over to the old
down to Dover.
Do you, living in Cleveland, feel the presence of Harvey Picard?
Actually, they're at the I think Harvey taught at the Institute of Art, so I think there's a couple pieces hanging in the hall. So yeah, it's just a kindred spirit. But by the way, I just want to mention all you kids and kittens out there that if you don't know who Mort Drucker is, go take a look at some Mort Drucker artwork.
Oh my God, how can you not know Mort Drucker?
And revel in all the glory of how wonderful, what a great artist he was and a good person he was.
He was a mentor of yours, right, Dave?
He absolutely was, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
I was very lucky to spend time sitting next to him in the studio while I was working, just shooting the breeze. Or if I had an art problem, I could call him up and say, "Yeah, come on over." And he'd pull out a piece of Bristol board, official.
Did he live in Cleveland?
No. He's in Long Island. He was in Long Island. Okay. So I was out there. Yeah. Just very generous, very caring. Man.
Love his. He was my favorite artist for Mad.
Absolutely.
Period. Like the way he could capture caricature, but yet get emotion across and make it funny and work is just. Just was. There's nobody like him.
And drew the best hands in cartooning.
Yes. His hands were,
the most expressive hands. Yeah.
He was an extremely talented guy.
I remember still, my friend and I got the Mad Magazine issue where he did the ripoff of, what was the James Franciscus TV show? Was it Longstreet?
Well, there was Longstreet, but
it was Longshot.
Yeah, but he also but in the '60s he did. I think they did Mr. Novak, which was his show. It was about the high school school teacher, and he did that. That was back when he was inking with a brush.
What I wanted to say was the drawings he did of the dog, James. Oh my God, my friend and I giggled about those for the drawings. For days.
Yeah.
I lived for those parodies. That was like my favorite thing about any Mad Magazine issue was went right to the Mort Drucker. Whatever parody he was parodying.
His when he did the Batman TV show, and he managed to catch Adam West's little punch just kind of hanging over the utility belt just a little bit. He just had such it was so subtle, but it was so perfect. You know.
No, it's great stuff.
Yeah.
Great
Beautiful
stuff.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Hopefully they'll eulogize him properly by putting out some treasuries or something of his work. You know,
there are a couple of books out there, and a couple of friends and I have tried to nudge DC. There's all Mort's war comic books that have not been reprinted in years.
Wow.
And they are just breathtaking. We can say, you need to put out a Mort Drucker anthology of just I forget, he did he did a bunch of stories about a female French resistance fighter, and of course Mort could always draw some really beautiful women. So just imagine, what you
IDW.
Well, I was going to say IDW needs to put, like, it's one of those things. Like, I'd love to see like a
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know that as far as the Mad stuff goes, and a lot of his advertising stuff, I know that his family they've kind of stockpiled that stuff. So there's a lot of this stuff out there that'd be hard to track down just because private collectors own it. But there's a good chunk of stuff that the family owns. So, any publishers out there, it would be worth your while to give them a call and find out.
We're living in the times that those are the big ticket items, but those IDW books are, what a great time to be able to get that stuff if you really want to see that artwork at actual
Oh,
size.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, I would love to see a collection of some of his stuff, done that way. I'd love to see those originals for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. So, Brad, do you have anything that you wanna pitch your website? You wanna is there anything?
It's interesting listening to you guys talk about what you can sell old comics for, because my big project that I've been working on for the past year is to take my comic book and magazine collection and put each comic in its own separate bag and give it its own separate board. And the problem with that is the way I have my comics stored, I'll have like no bags, no boards, or two comics in one bag with no board. If you give each comic its own dedicated bag and its own dedicated board, my collection takes up a third more space, and so I have to get rid of a third of my comics and magazines, and it's like so painful.
Yeah.
And yet I'll never read this stuff again. I mean, it's this weird head trip.
That's why I'm selling mine. Because you know what? Most of my collection is bagged and boarded, and you can't see it. It's on this side of my studio. But I've got 2 filing cabinets, and they're not like alphabetized or anything, but they're in order. But if I think about a comic that I want to see for reference, that means I've got to go to the filing cabinet, I got to pull out the drawer, I got to find the comic, and then I got to pull it out of the plastic bag without the Scotch tape damaging, and it's oh my God, here's the tray.
Yeah.
Or look it up online.
Not putting them on bags and boards. I mean, they're a lot more accessible.
Yeah. Well, that's the nice thing about the IDW reprints is that because they print them in black and white, you don't have to get those like the Marvel reprints where they put them on that bright white paper, and then the colors are not the same as.
Yeah. The Jose Villarruba, the colorist, is doing an online blog. So, now that he's not working either, he's analyzing, calling from a colorist's perspective, where every day, 2 or 3 times a day, he has a screed against the way that they're recoloring those old comic books.
Yeah.
And he's going back and showing the original. He's showing it with adjusted levels adjusted, and then he's showing the reprint. It's like, well, that's why I'm hanging on to my old comics.
That stuff was just meant to be read on that crappy, pulpy paper.
Right.
Kimbrough, you just put up
it's really interesting reading Jose's posts, because he's pointing out, like what I did with the Death of Superman, he's pointing out these cheesy old 50s, 60s, 70s comic books
Yeah,
actually had really beautiful, subtle, interesting color. And it's like,
absolutely.
oh, wow, you know, opening my eyes.
Those Dr. Martin dyes, they were nice.
They were. I
Well,
colored plenty
just
of
the way
books
they're
with
printed
those.
in the newsprint, you know,
Yeah,
the way they achieve levels of depth through solid color.
yeah,
type of thing.
absolutely. Yeah.
Kimbrough, you've been sitting quietly behind this whole time. So what do you want to pitch, buddy? Give us your. I saw you just put up stuff, so go ahead. We
Can't hear you.
You're muted. Wait,
Still
Can you
muted.
hear me now?
I
Yep.
unmuted you. There you go.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just fascinated listening to all this stuff. It's you know, I love Mad Magazine, and I love, like, you know, a lot of the old stuff, and I follow some of these things. So I'm just sitting back, just kind of taking a ride and enjoying it all, which is very, very cool and interesting. And you know, a lot of what I'm hearing, I can apply to a lot of the things I want to do with my storyboarding and writing and directing and stand up and all the things that I'm doing right now. I'm just grabbing nuggets of information that I can apply where needed. But
Yeah.
You just did a short film, so where can everybody find your short film?
yeah, I put the link up for the short film. We're premiering it tomorrow at 7 on podbrothernation.com, which is my website for all my comedy, short films, and podcasts. The film is called VGA, which stands for Grandma's Virtual Adventure. And it's a 8-minute film that we did for the 48-hour Stuck at Home Film Challenge. And Dave is in the film.
I am.
Oh, cool.
Dave made the cut. He's not on the cutting room floor.
I didn't end up on the cutting room floor, so that's awesome.
Okay, so
Yeah.
give us that information again so we can
Yeah,
write it down.
VGA, what?
It's in the chat. The link is in the chat. So if you click on that link, and then tomorrow at 7, it's already scheduled to go live for the premiere screening of it. And it's we all were at our homes, and we all shot our segments, and we did all our stuff, and they uploaded them to me on my Google Drive, and I cut it all together and made a nice little story from it. So it's cool, and it's interesting. It's a cute little thing, and it's something that keeps us from going crazy while we're quarantined. So if you get a chance, check it out. And
What is it, VGA? What? Say it again. No, the address. Where is it? Where can we find it?
podbrothernation.com,
Yeah, okay.
and then you click watch this. And I put the link in the chat there, so you can just cut and paste it and put it up.
Cool.
All right. Well, gentlemen, it was an honor and a privilege as always. And also I want to thank Tim. He took off, and I didn't get a chance to thank Tim Eldred as well. Awesome. Everybody should check out Pitsberg. You know, and it's a quite an interesting, well done book. Or I'm sorry, Brad, project. So,
Well, it's like what it reminds me of is when they started coming up with cinema, and you have all these cinema directors whose template was stage, right? And it took somebody like D.W. Griffith to like say, no, this is not a theater piece.
So you're saying that I'm the
whole
ignorant
new thing here.
I'm the ignorant bastard who's like.
Well, no, you just gotta free your mind. Like
all right.
Like John Lennon said, you gotta free your mind instead.
Well, you know you know, free your mind. So I'll. I
have to too. That's why I want to look at this thing, because I'm going, oh yeah.
Yeah, Tim's got some cool stuff. You could check it out for sure. It's actually really, really cool stuff. You know, and I'm impressed by the fact that he isn't limited. Like he didn't, you know, most guys would just be happy putting a comic book out, and the guy is actually like, no, I'm going to do more with this. I'm going to make it interactive. I'm going to make it, you know, and I'm going to put animation in here. I'm going to put voices in here. I think that's cool. You know, I think that's a really cool process, because he's bringing his experience, I think, from in animation, in cinema, and working, you know, and he's bringing it into this medium that you know, with the web stuff. And and anything goes. And I think that's really cool. I think comics would probably be much better served if more people were that adventurous and doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, for sure. So, all right, guys, we'll have a wonderful night. Brad, is there anything else that you like? Will we cover everything that you wanted to talk about?
You
good?
I'm in my life going, so what do I do with the rest of my life? That's where
you can come here every Wednesday. You can come here. So
right.
That'll give you.
All right. That takes care of Wednesday night. Now we just have to find something for you.
Well, that's Wednesday. That's Wednesday.
That's Wednesday handle.
I can't be responsible for every night of the week. All right, guys.
All right, guys.
It's an honor. It's always an honor.
Good seeing you again, Dave, after all this time.
Chris,
yeah, it's good seeing you.
It's great to see you, Chris. It's great to, thank you for being here, guys. Thank you for sharing stuff. I know that people always get a ton out of this. So thank you. And you guys are all superstars in my book. So have a wonderful
night.
Dave.
You too.
All right. Have a good one.
And Stephen, thank you.
Chris, I'll see you on the Facebook page.
Excellent, man.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Good night,
everybody.
guys. Good night.